An exciting session planned. So thank you for sharing your lunch with us to learn about the new paid leave, bonding leave benefit in Minnesota. My name is Thea Bryan, and I am a leader of an initiative called Little Moments Count. It's a Minnesota and Western Wisconsin initiative focused on the importance of the first 1,000 days of life and how we can best support families. Little Moments Count is really proud to partner with DEED on this important webinar today. We know we've got parents joining us and those supporting parents. So we're excited to talk about the new benefit and answer all of your questions. Just what an honor it is to join this great group of speakers and be co-promoting this amazing new benefit. Paid family leave and bonding, in case folks have any questions about this, it's really critical to both parents and a child's emotional and physical health, especially in the window of the first months of life and those first years of life, when we know there are over 1 million brain connections forming each second in a baby's brain. That's each second. So that bonding time is really critical, and supporting families is really critical in this window. This topic is really so important from a Little Moments Count and a public health and a healthcare and a community perspective. Paid leave can actually be a life-saving initiative, really allowing that time and helping families to heal post-birth, establish lactation and early feeding routines, doing all that important connecting and bonding, and even identifying sometimes important and serious medical recovery needs, including issues related to abnormal postpartum bleeding, infections, and even sometimes critical mental well-being supports that might be needed for a family. So in addition to what you'll learn today about this great new benefit, I also invite you to visit our Little Moments Count website to learn more about the importance and the science of that first 1,000 days of life. Really, why is it so critical, and why support for families across Minnesota and into Western Wisconsin is so critical. We actually partner with over 125 different partners across Minnesota and Wisconsin on that work. So there's lots of great resources there. So you go to littlemomentscount.org to learn more. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Greg Norfleet, Director of Minnesota Paid Leave, who will be taking it from here.
Thanks so much, Thea. My name is Greg Norfleet, and I have the privilege of serving as the director for the Paid Leave Division here in Minnesota. We're so excited about today's presentation and to be able to offer support to new parents across the state. To start off, I think it's important to realize why we're doing this. 25% of maternity leaves across the country last an average of 2 weeks. And for paternity leaves, the average paternity leave in the United States lasts just 1 week. As Thea mentioned, the first years of a child's life are essential. This is a period in your child's life where their minds are developing at an incredible speed, and they're learning everything they need to know about the world around them. What we learn and experience during those formative years sets the stage for the person that you're going to become. As the child's learning about their world, we want you to be part of your child's world. We want children in the state to grow up surrounded by love and support of the people around them, to grow up with knowledge that you as a parent are going to be there with them from the very start. On behalf of the Paid Leave Division, we're honored to be able to offer this benefit, and I'm going to turn it over to Betsy Horn, our Strategic Program Analysis Manager, who's going to explain how bonding leave works.
All right, I think I jumped over a few details from our MC, so I'm going to send it back to Danny first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danny. I am the MC for today. I'll be doing just some housekeeping for this webinar. I'm on the public engagement team with Minnesota Paid Leave. We're thrilled so many of you can join us today. We have right now 555 people with us and counting. At today's presentation, we'll explain what Minnesota Paid Leave is, who's eligible, and how to apply step by step. We also have a ton of information on the state's website that is paidleave.mn.gov. This includes pages for employees, employers, self-employed folks, and certifiers. I'll also note before we start that today's slides will be on the website soon as well. We'll send those to everyone that registered as soon as they're available. They will also be posted on our public events page. And this webinar will be recorded for training purposes, and should we decide at a later date to make that recording public, we'll link the post on our website or post the link on our website, and all registrants will be notified too. Additionally, we send out monthly email updates about paid leave. And I know most of you signed up for these when you registered for the webinar, but if you didn't, or if you're not sure if you signed up for our newsletter, you can always sign up on the website. All of these links that I just mentioned will be in the chat. All right, so like Greg said, today we are joined by Betsy Orn, our Strategic Program Analysis Manager. We'll start with a presentation from Betsy, followed by a Q&A session. And for that Q&A session, I'll tell you how this works. You can submit your questions to us using the chat button. That chat button is at the top of your screen. It's a purple speech bubble with a question mark on it. Now there's two tabs in the chat, the Featured tab and the My Questions tab. Check the Featured tab to see announcements from our team, like the links I just mentioned. Then use the My Questions tab to ask a question anytime during the presentation. Only you and the Paid Leave webinar team can see your question about the program. Other attendees cannot see your question. Our team behind the scenes will be reviewing and moderating the questions for the Q&A session later on. If you have a question about your unique individual circumstance, or if we don't get to your question, our contact center is ready to help you anytime. My colleague will put their contact information in the chat as well. That's an email and a phone number. All right, that's enough from me. It's now time for the presentation. I'm going to pass it to our presenter, Betsy. Take it away, Betsy.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everybody. So excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us and learning more about Minnesota Paid Leave. So we're going to jump in and start by talking a bit about what is paid leave. And I know you might be wondering, am I covered by paid leave? What types of leave does paid leave cover? And is my job protected while I'm on leave? We're going to dig into all those details. So to start, just laying some foundation. The paid leave law was enacted in 2023, and it begins January 1st, 2026. So it's so exciting. We are just a few short weeks away. And the law provides job protections and benefit payments from the state to individuals who need time off to either care for themselves or for a loved one. And Minnesota Paid Leave is funded, much like medical insurance. It's funded by premiums that are paid by contributions paid by employers and employees. And the Minnesota Paid Leave benefit will be paid directly to employees by the state, so by Minnesota. So excited to get into this more details. All right, so another important thing to cover is who is covered under the law. So this slide really helps to identify some of the people that we get a lot of questions about. The Minnesota Paid Leave law is quite broad. It covers almost every Minnesota employer and almost every Minnesota worker, even if they're part-time or temporary or even most seasonal workers. There are some groups where there's some confusion. So if you are in one of the groups in green, that means that you're covered. Those covered workers, again, include full-time, part-time workers, union workers, agricultural workers, temporary workers, student workers, employed family members. Some of these groups have an exemption from the unemployment law, so you might be wondering, am I covered by paid leave? But yes, if you fall into the green bucket, you are covered. The group that is not covered under our law but can opt in are in purple. So if you're an independent contractor, maybe you get a 1099 at the end of the year, or you're self-employed, you run your own LLC, you are not covered under the program. However, you can opt in, and there is information on our website today that tells you more about that process and what that looks like. The group in red is those who are not covered and cannot opt in. So that includes federal government employees, railroad employees, and if you've been designated as a seasonal hospitality employee, which we can talk more about if there are questions. The other thing to know about coverage is that because this is a Minnesota program, it covers Minnesota workers. And the law defines a Minnesota worker as people who fall under this localization test. So there are two parts. The first is you're localized in Minnesota if you work 50% or more of the year from a location in Minnesota. So that means if you work from a home or an office in Minnesota 50% or more of the time, you're covered. The other group that's covered is if you're not localized in any one state. So maybe you're a trucker that travels around and is in Wisconsin a third of the time, South Dakota a third of the time, and Minnesota a third of their time. In that case, it matters where you live. If you live in Minnesota, then you are covered by the law. So this can get a little bit confusing. So we'll go through a couple of scenarios. I work in Minnesota, but I live in Wisconsin. Am I covered? Yes. So if you travel across the border and come and work from a location in Minnesota, more than 50% of the time, you're covered. My employer is based in Iowa, but I work remotely in Minnesota. Am I covered? Yes. If you work remotely from your home in Minnesota, 50% or more of the time, you are covered. And last, I work in multiple states, but I live in Minnesota. Am I covered? Well, here it depends. So if you work in multiple states, but none of those states, 50% or more of the time, then it matters if you live in Minnesota. So if you live in Minnesota, you are covered. If you have questions about this, there are more guidance on this on our website, and you can always call our contact center. All right, so this is really our program on a slide. So paid leave has two main types. There's medical leave, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's leave to take care of one's own self when they're faced with a serious medical condition. These are conditions that last at least 7 days. So they could require you to be away from work. So this is different than something that would require sick leave or earned sick and safe time that you might just need for a day-to-day absence. This is again for longer term medical illnesses. And in these cases, it needs to be certified by a medical provider. The other type of leave is family leave. And this is a little bit broader. There's 4 types of family leave. There's bonding leave. That's leave to care for a new child that's been welcomed into your home from birth, adoption, or foster care. I know that's leave many of you on the call are wondering about. We'll talk a lot more about today. There's military leave. That's leave because a family member is on active duty or has been called to an impending call to duty. There's caring leave, which is leave to care for a family member with a serious health condition. Or there's safety leave, which is leave because of domestic abuse, sexual assault, or stalking of the individual or the individual's family member. And that's leave for certain reasons, like to attend court hearings, seek medical support, or relocate to a safer location. So in either case, there is an individual has 12 weeks of leave available of medical leave or 12 weeks of family leave available in a benefit year. In some scenarios, if an individual is eligible for both, they could be eligible for up to a maximum of 20 weeks combined. And that is across a benefit year. A benefit year starts the day of first absence and goes forward 1 year from there. So again, within a benefit year, you're eligible for up to 12 weeks of medical leave or 12 weeks of family or a combined maximum of 20 weeks. And in all scenarios, leave must be certified by a qualified professional. As in the scenarios of medical leave or caring leave, again, those would be certified through by a medical provider. And then in other military or safety, there are other documents. And you can find a lot more information on our website. And we'll be talking more about bonding leave in a few moments. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, paid leave involves 2 main components. There's benefit payments and job protections. Let's start by talking a bit about benefit payments. So paid leave helps Minnesota families focus on what really matters, whether that's caring for a child, recovering from an illness, or supporting a loved one. As you heard at the beginning of this presentation, it allows families to take bonding leave to bond with their child and to help support that development of the baby or the child who's been welcomed into their home, as well as the parent and their relationship to that child. And research shows how important that is. The benefit payment allows families to not have to make that decision between financial well-being and spending that time with their loved one. And for that reason, the law is a progressive scale. It means that lower wage workers get more support. Minnesotans can get up to 90% of their wages replaced, up to the maximum of $1,423 per week. That's based on 2025 numbers. So workers who are on the lower end of the income spectrum will get a higher percentage of their wage replaced, and workers on the higher end of the income spectrum will get a lower percentage replaced. In order to qualify for benefit payments, you must have earned 5.3% of the statewide average annual wage in the past year in order to be eligible. That's $3,900 in 2025. So if you earned that amount, you could be eligible for payments. It's also worth noting that there are other payments that if you receive them at the same time might make you ineligible for leave. And those include things like unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, or Social Security disability insurance. So each of those, again, you'll be asked about that in the application, and they could offset or make it so you cannot take leave. So that explains how the benefit payment works. Let's talk about how the program is funded. So as I said before, paid leave is a social insurance program. So much like health insurance, it's funded by premiums. And when paid leave starts, the total premium rate is 0.88% of wages for most employers, and it's 0.66% of wages for small employers. This rate covers both family and medical leave. And that premium rate will be applied on wages up to the Social Security cap of $185,000. The first premiums will be due to the state on April 30th, 2026, but employers can start deducting the premiums from employees on January 1st. In most cases, we've heard that employers plan to share these premiums between employers and employees. And employers may deduct up to half or up to 0.44% from employee paychecks. And that's sort of regardless of business size, they can deduct up to 0.44%. So we hope most of you, the employees on the call, have already received notification about this information and should know what premium contributions they will be receiving. They should be expecting from their paychecks starting in January. So this goes into a bit more detail and some examples. So here there's the large employer and the small employer. Again, as we mentioned, employers must contribute at least 0.44% for large employers and at least 0.22% for small employers. In both scenarios, an employee may pay up to 0.44%. Some employers may choose to cover more. They cannot collect more than 0.44% of wages, and this collection cannot cause employees to earn less than minimum wage. All right, so benefit payments, premium payments, this can be confusing. We know it's a lot of math. So we've done a lot of the math for you by creating two calculators. So on our website, you can both estimate the costs of your premiums and the amount you could earn while you're on leave through benefits. And so just as an example, for somebody who earned $70,000 in the past year, their weekly premium would be about a little under $6, and the benefits they can expect when they're on leave are a little over $1,000. So that just gives you a little bit of a sense of how the program works. And again, we'll encourage you to check our website and use these calculators. Maybe someone can even put that in the chat right now. All right, the other part of the program is job protections. So we're going to talk about that now. Generally, there's a few things to know about job protections. This allows people to know that they can leave their job and still go back and have it be protected while they're on, after they come back from leave. So the main component to understand is that generally you must be restored to your same job or an equivalent job with the same pay, seniority, and benefits prior to when you started your leave. And this job protection kicks in 90 days from the date of hire. There are some other job protections in place for new parents under the Minnesota Parental Leave Act that kick in even sooner. So important things to know about job protections. The paid leave law also requires that generally your health insurance and other group health insurances must be continued while you're on leave in the same manner they would have been contributed to as if you were not on leave. So for example, I'm currently getting healthcare paid by my employer and myself, so that would need to be continued while I'm on leave. My employer would need to continue to pay their portion, and I would still be responsible for my portion. If you have questions about how your employer plans to collect those premiums, you should ask your employer. Finally, the law prohibits retaliation or interference. Employers must not interfere or retaliate against you if you apply for or use paid leave. And if you have concerns that if they're of retaliation or interference, you can submit a concern to the Department of Labor and Industry or DLI, or call our contact center for more information. Again, the health insurance and the no retaliation or interference provisions, those are from the first date of hire. So there's no time requirement on that. Even if you started in the last month, your employer is still required not to retaliate and to continue to pay into the health insurance premiums. All right. As I mentioned, there are other programs besides paid leave that are important to know about in terms of job protections. So the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, and the Pregnancy and Parental Leave Act of Minnesota, PPL, are both laws that provide unpaid but job protected leave for different reasons. Now, so again, important to know that these may provide job protections, but it's also important to know that these laws, employers can run these continuously with paid leave. So that means if your employer is choosing to run paid leave concurrently with FMLA and PPL, leave taken under RUN program would reduce time available under the other program for the same reason. If you have questions about this, again, we're encouraging you to talk to your employer about if they're running these concurrently and how that might impact your leave schedule. It's also important to note that under the paid leave law, employers can choose to meet their obligations through an equivalent plan. These are plans that they might either buy on the private marketplace, or they might decide to self-insure, that are either as good or better than the Minnesota paid leave law. In those scenarios, if your employer has decided to go with an equivalent plan and they've applied to the state, they should have notified you who that equivalent plan is through and how you can apply for benefits. Again, your benefits should be as good or better than what's offered under the state plan, and you have the same job protections as other workers, and you can appeal or raise concerns to the state if you feel that something about the plan is not equivalent or better than the state plan. Another important thing to note, if you are being covered by an equivalent plan, you cannot be charged more than you would be under the state plan. And as I said before, that's up to 0.44% of your wages in 2026. All right, so those were the basics of the program. Now we really want to dig into why we know a lot of you are here. We want to talk about bonding and birth. So we're going to talk through, are you covered by paid leave? What types of leave are covered? So first of all, for all the new or expecting parents on the call, congratulations. We're really excited to be here and to support you during this very exciting time. So bonding leave is available to parents who welcome a new child into their home through birth, adoption, or foster care. And bonding leave can be taken either in one big block that's continuously, so it could be taken all at one time up to 12 weeks, or it could be taken in smaller increments, and that's intermittent leave. For bonding leave, both parents can take up to 12 weeks of leave each. And the leave one parent takes does not reduce the leave the other parent takes. And again, leave can be taken at different times or on different schedules. Those are all allowed under the law. Now, when can I take bonding leave? So bonding leave must take place within 12 months of a child's birth, adoption, or placement. The law does provide a bit of an exception here for if a child was hospitalized longer than the birthing parent. So for example, if a child spent time in the NICU, then the leave must be completed within 12 months of the day the child came home from the hospital. And that's a question that you'll be able to answer in the application process. So again, regardless, that means that the leave must end the day before the child's first birthday or the 1-year anniversary of their adoption or foster placement date. This is important for those of you who are planning to go in and apply soon. Make sure that your leave starts the day before the child's birthday or placement or adoption date. And one thing to note for any foster or adoptive parents on the call, the law also allows that bonding leave can be used to complete certain tasks before you welcome the child into your home for adoption and foster care placement. And if you have more questions about that, we can follow up and talk more through that, or you can call our contact center. So we get this question a lot. People are calling the contact center and asking this every day. So we're going to cover it right here. What if I welcomed a child in 2025? Can I take leave? Yes. So again, because our program starts in January 1st of this year, it means that no one could have taken leave before that date. So anyone who meets the criteria where you have a baby that was born within 2025, you can take leave up to 12 months of the child's birth, adoption, or foster care placement. So let's talk about a couple examples here to make this make more sense. First example, if your child arrived June 14th of 2025, again, congratulations. You can take leave until June 13th of 2026. That is up to 12 weeks available, and that's because that's the maximum under the law. So again, as long as the leave is complete by June 13th, there will be at least 12 weeks available. Now, if your child arrived February 27th, 2025, you could take leave until February 26th, 2026. In that case, the time available is only 8 weeks because that's the time between January 1st and February 26th, 2026. So again, the real rule here is if you had a baby in 2025, you can take leave up to the day before your child's first birthday. Now, one of the most important things to know if you're planning to apply for bonding leave is about certification. Again, certification is how we know that you welcomed a child into your home through birth, adoption, or foster care. So talking about birth, bonding leave can be certified for birth in 3 main ways. The first is a certified birth certificate. The second is hospital birth documentation, and the third is a verification of birth form. I'm going to talk about each of these a bit, but in all cases, they need to have the child's name, date of birth, and the parent's name that is taking leave, and a signature. So we want to be really clear here because this is where some people are getting a little tripped up. A certified birth certificate is the official birth certificate you might get from the county, the state, or the country where the baby was born. So it often has a water stamp or watermark, a seal, and a signature. It's issued by the county. You usually have to pay a small amount in order to get this official form. We cannot accept the unofficial form that you sometimes get in advance to verify the name of the baby. The second thing you can submit is hospital birth documentation. So you could submit a letter from your medical provider, or again, something that could be discharge paperwork when you left the hospital. But in those scenarios, it needs to be signed by the provider. So sometimes you might see an after visit summary or a hospital record. If it's not signed, we can't use that to certify the birth. The last option is actually the form that Paid Leave created. It's called a verification of birth form. If you're not sure what to use, what you can do is download this form or send it to your provider and have them sign it and upload it to our website, and that will work. I want to say again, we can't accept other things that are unsigned or don't have all that information. So we can't accept uncertified birth records, or sometimes hospitals have been issuing birth certificates or crib cards. Again, those are not signed by a medical provider, so we cannot accept them. There's a lot more information on our website, so please go and check it out, pl.mn.gov/bonding. It also gives a lot more information about adoption and foster care paperwork. Generally, those leaves can be certified with legal documents that you would receive when you officially become an adoptive or foster care parent, but go to that website to make sure you have the full information. All right. I know, as we said, a lot of people on this call might be expecting, and so you might be wondering, what if I need leave for pregnancy or birth? Well, in those scenarios, you might also qualify for medical leave. If you take both bonding leave and medical leave in the same year, you then could take up to 20 weeks of total leave in the year. So a reminder that the medical leave is determined about the amount of time you need to recover from birth, and that would be signed by your healthcare provider and determined by your healthcare provider. So often this is 6 to 8 weeks. And then you'd also qualify, because you welcomed a new child into your home, for bonding leave, and that would be up to 12 weeks. As we go live with this program, you will need to complete 2 applications, one for the medical leave portion and one for the family leave or bonding leave portion. All right. So that brings us to the exciting part, preparing to apply. So we want to make sure you have everything you need to get ready to apply, including the documents you need and learning a bit about what the application process looks like. So the first thing we want to remind everyone is that under the paid leave law, it requires that employees notify their employer before you apply for paid leave. And you should notify them at least 30 days before or as soon as possible that you need leave. Again, in most cases, if you're planning to take bonding leave in January of this year, that 30 days is either here or is coming up. So we're encouraging people to have those conversations with their employers now, because likely that leave is foreseeable and you should be telling them about your plans. In addition, you should follow your documented workplace policy for notifying your employer. So that means a lot of employers have an email address they tell you to send notification to, or they suggest, you need to tell your manager or somebody in HR. You need to either send it by email or have an actual conversation. Again, whatever that policy is, you're required to follow it. So many employers may have updated that policy with paid leave going live. So we encourage you to ask your employer what that policy is and then follow it. When you apply to paid leave, you will be asked to share how you told your employer, and that will then later be shared with your employer. So make sure that you first and foremost get on the same page with your employer. As we mentioned before, under paid leave, you can take leave either continuously or intermittently. A continuous leave is a leave that's all in one chunk. So maybe it's 8 full weeks or 12 full weeks where you'll be away from work. Intermittent leave is leave that's taken in smaller blocks of time. It could be 2 days a week or 1 week every other week. Now, an employer may set the policy of the shortest length of time that can be taken as intermittent leave. For example, they could say that employees can take a day worth of intermittent leave, or they could say employees could take an hour worth of intermittent leave. They can't set the shortest length beyond 1 day. So this is another reason why when you notify your employer, we encourage you to share your leave schedule with your employer. It is required that you let them know what your leave schedule is, and give them, again, as much notice as you possibly can. So if this leave is foreseeable, you should be giving them at least 30 days of notice and sharing your leave schedule with your employer. Another important conversation to have when you talk to your employer is about PTO and supplemental payments. So first, we're going to talk a bit about supplemental payments. This is probably a new term for a lot of you. So employers can offer something called supplemental payments under the program. This is sort of like topping off someone's paid leave payment. So in this picture, you see an employee's normal pay, and then you see on the right their paid leave payment, which would come from the paid leave program. And that is, let's pretend that's 66% of someone's typical pay. An employer can choose to supplement or pay an additional amount for the additional 33%. So employers, for the most part, can make this decision. If you are subject to a collective bargaining agreement, there may be language in the collective bargaining agreement that could also impact this. If your employer offers supplemental payments, that's important to know. So you should ask them, are they offering supplemental payments or not? Employees do have a right of refusal here, but it's also helpful to know if you'll be able to receive supplemental payments. Those could also be in the form of sick leave, vacation leave, or PTO. So they might let you use a third of a day of your sick leave throughout your leave to bring your payment up to full payment. So important to know about this so that you can make some informed decisions. You will not need to tell us if you're receiving supplemental payments. Your employer will tell us that you will be receiving supplemental payments. What you do need to tell us is about PTO. So if you are not receiving supplemental payments, or if you would like to, you can choose instead to use your PTO, sick, and vacation instead of receiving payment from paid leave. So for example, if you have a lot of sick leave, you could choose that for the first 2 weeks of your leave, you are going to use that sick leave instead of receiving the paid leave benefit. During the application, you'll be asked, do you plan to use paid time off, vacation, or sick time from your employer? You need to tell us if you plan to do that during your leave time. If you do that, we will not pay you for those weeks because you'll be paid instead by your employer. If your decision changes during the course of your leave, you can definitely let us know, and you need to let us know if you begin to receive sick leave, vacation, or PTO so that we can adjust your payment. All right, so again, talk to your employer about supplemental payments and PTO. Make sure you all are on the same page, and then when you come and apply to us, you will just need to let us know if you plan to use PTO, sick, or vacation time while you're on leave, and we will not pay you for that time. All right. So this really talks about the overall application process. So as we said before, the first step is that the employee needs to tell their employer about their plans to take leave. Then you can come and apply to paid leave using our online application. And the employer will receive notification as soon as you submit that application, and they'll be asked to verify application details. They'll have 7 days to complete and review that, make sure that everything looks correct, and then paid leave will adjudicate or make a decision on the application. Once we've made that decision, both the employee and the employer will be notified of the determination, and it will be available in the paid leave portal for both the employer and the applicant to see all of the details. So again, all along the way, your employer will be notified about what's happening. They will see a lot of the details you supply about PTO, sick, vacation, about your leave schedule. And so for that reason, to address any issues up front, we encourage you and that you need to have a very clear conversation and discussion with your employer. All right. So as you get ready to apply, we also want to just make sure you are aware and ready to share some other critical information. So you will need some basic personal information like your name, address, and phone number. You'll need some identification documents such as your driver's license or a passport. You'll need to know the dates you plan to take leave, and you'll need to have those certification documents ready to go as well. And then last, you need information on your employers, including your usual schedule. So we're so excited to share that we are now open for early applications for bonding leave. So we have already been receiving applications, and we know some of you on the call might be getting ready to apply today, and we're really excited to receive your application as well. You can apply for bonding leave today if you meet these 3 criteria. 1, you welcomed a child into your home in 2025. 2, you want to start leave in the next 60 days because our statute says you can only apply 60 days in advance. And 3, you want to take your leave in one big block of continuous leave. So again, if all 3 don't apply to you, don't worry, you'll be able to apply when paid leave begins on January 1st. So if any of those other things are true, wait until then. And again, we're encouraging you, if you plan to use medical leave and bonding leave, you should wait until January to apply because your leave dates are likely to change. So for example, if you're expecting in the next couple of weeks, you may be eligible for medical leave during 2026. So we're encouraging you to wait to apply so that you can take advantage and understand the full amount of leave and apply and be approved for the correct dates. All right, so once the program starts in 2026, you can always apply up to 60 days before your leave starts. You can start and save an application before that time, but we cannot approve an application that's submitted more than 60 days out. And starting in January, you can apply before your baby arrives if your baby will arrive in 2026. You can be approved for medical leave before the baby arrives, but you will need to return to your application to submit documentation after your child arrives to be approved for bonding leave. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our presentation. So we just want to remind people to visit the paid leave website. This is where you will apply. This is where you can review the steps to get you ready, check frequently asked questions, access those calculators. And we also want to make sure you all take a moment to write down the number for the contact center. They are standing by and excited to answer your questions. If you do not get your question answered today, again, encourage you to either call or email them. But I will now turn it over to Danny so we can answer some of the many questions.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Again, today's slides will be available soon on the paid leave website at paidleave.mn.gov. Now let's transition over to our Q&A session. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted a question, whether it was on your registration form when you signed up for the webinar, or whether it's been in the chat today during the presentation. If you'd still like to submit a question, please do so. You can find the chat button at the top of the screen. Again, it looks like a purple speech button or speech bubble with a question mark on it. And a reminder, only you and our webinar team can see your question. All right, and like I said, all of your questions are important to us. We'll address as many as we can today, but there are 182 of them. So if we aren't able to get to your question, please know, like Betsy said, our contact center is standing by ready to help you. Okay, I'm going to start off with a few questions from the audience that were submitted in advance on that registration form because a lot of these questions were asked by multiple people. So we want to make sure to cover them. Then we'll get into some of those live questions from the audience chat. All right. The first set of questions we're going to cover pertain to applying for paid leave and leave schedules, right? When are you actually going to take the leave? So first question here, who is eligible to apply now for bonding leave? I know we just went over this, but it bears repeating. Betsy?
It does, yes. So we'll say it again. This is a limited group of people who can apply right now. And we understand that. This is because we don't have operational ability to review all applications right now. So we're only accepting applications before January 1st for a select group. That is people who had a baby in 2025, who want to start leave 60 days from the day they apply, so that's probably in January or early February, and who want to take continuous leave. Okay, so if you want, I just saw another question pop up. If you want to take intermittent bonding leave, you need to wait until January 1st. I know that can be frustrating, but we understand that we can't, because the program goes live in January 1st, we can't accept all applications at this time.
Great, thank you, Betsy. All right, next question here from the audience. What if I'm currently on maternity leave? Can I extend my leave once my current leave is over?
Yeah, so again, this goes back into depending on what exactly your dates are. This could vary a little bit, but as we said, bonding leave, everybody is eligible for bonding leave up to 12 months from the welcoming date of the new child by birth, adoption, or foster. So say this person is currently on maternity leave and January 1st rolls around and they will be they start fresh on that bonding leave calendar. So they are eligible for up to 12 weeks of bonding leave. Now, if you just had a baby at the very end of the year, you could still also be eligible for some medical leave. So that's the caveat I want to make there. Everybody will be eligible for the 12 weeks of bonding leave if it's complete by that 12-month date. And then if you recently had a baby, you could be eligible for medical leave as well.
Great. All right. Next question is about childcare. Can a parent have their child in childcare while also being on bonding leave?
So what we want to emphasize is, again, bonding leave is meant as time to bond with your child. And again, that's time to spend with your child, to build that connection, to learn to be a parent, which I know is so important for both parents to do. So we really want to remind and emphasize that we know that's what people are excited for. That's what we heard about at the beginning of the call, is what the research is all about. And we know it takes a village to raise a child, and there may be times when other people are involved in caring for that child while you're on leave.
Right. Great. Next question, can I take medical leave for birth recovery and bonding leave back to back? Must I submit separate applications for each of these?
Yeah, this is a great question because I think it is new for a lot of people, right? To think about this differently. Most people had sort of one chunk of leave, at least I did when I had my kids. But it's under our program, it is two different things. So medical leave is medical leave to recover from the birth, and your medical provider will certify that to say how much time you need to recover. And then as soon as that time ends, yes, you can start bonding the next day if you would like. And that bonding leave is leave to bond with your new child. So again, the medical amount is going to depend on how much time you need to recover from birth. It's typically 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the birth situation. And then bonding leave, again, is up to 12 weeks. We are at launch requiring you to apply for these separately. The medical leave you can apply for in advance by just telling us that you're expecting a child, you're pregnant, with a medical certification. And then the bonding leave cannot be certified until the baby is actually welcomed into your home. So again, you need verification that the baby was born. So at that time, again, it could be a birth certificate, paperwork from the hospital, a letter from the hospital, or that verification of birth form that's signed by a medical provider.
All right. Thank you, Betsy. Next question. I've seen this a lot in the chat today too. Do we need to know in advance of applying exactly how many weeks we want to take for bonding leave and medical leave?
So I would say generally yes, but there are some caveats here. So again, when you plan to apply, you need to notify your employer of your leave dates, and your leave schedule. So it's really important to come in and to be on the same page with them about what those dates are. If you plan to apply right now, you will apply for specific dates or a specific schedule of dates that you need off, and you'll be approved for that time. So if you need to make changes to that, it will require a modification to your, which is not something we can currently do in the application, but it will be something you can do starting in January to change those dates. If, say, you decide you are going to take 12 weeks right now, and then after 8 weeks you decide that there's been a situation that has changed, there is a process, again, to modify your leave where you could extend it or you could shorten it. And there's different requirements for each. If you want to come back to work early, you need to notify your employer 2 days in advance and notify us 2 days in advance so that we can stop payments. If you'd like to extend your leave, that requires a modification and approval to get that longer leave approved.
Okay, thanks. And last question in this section about applying and leave schedules. What happens if you do not go back to work after taking paid leave? Do you have to repay?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and I know some employers have set different policies around this. Under the paid leave law, it's not allowed that there can be any contingencies, any requirements around the leave, around returning to work. So no, there are scenarios where we understand people may make a different decision, and this is a social insurance program that covers all employers, almost all employers and almost all employees. And so no, even if you make a decision not to go back to work, there's no repayment process.
Okay, great. I'm going to do a few more of these questions we got from audience members in advance and then go to our live questions here. All right, so this question we hear often is about intermittent bonding leave. Can bonding leave be taken intermittently in smaller chunks? And if so, does it need to be taken on a consistent, predictable schedule, or can you take that time sporadically?
Yeah, thanks again. I think we've covered this, but I want to make sure we say it again quite clearly. So yes, bonding leave can be taken intermittently. Employers get to decide the smallest chunk of time that can be taken intermittently, from down to a minute or an hour up to 1 day. If applicants plan to take bonding leave intermittently, they must discuss their schedule with their employer as soon as possible, and that is really up to 30 days in advance if possible. And they should make an effort not to cause major disruptions to their employer's business. So if you plan to take bonding leave intermittently starting in January, you should discuss your schedule as soon as possible with your employer to make sure that they know what your plans are.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Betsy. Last of the kind of pre-submitted questions here, how long will it take to process our application and confirm if we're approved? And then when do payments begin? Is there a gap?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So again, our goal with processing of applications under our statute is to process applications and issue a determination or a decision within 2 weeks. So we hope to have that information, and we'll be able to process your application faster, again, if you have everything there. So if you have the correct certification documents, if you've come in and you've had a clear conversation, you're on the same page with your employer, that's what's going to make it even faster than that. So again, 2 weeks is our goal. It could go even faster if you have all of your documents and other things submitted correctly. And once approved, again, we can't start any payments until January. So if you are approved for a leave that starts in January, after our payments go out weekly. So after you've taken leave for 1 week, on the 8th day, your payment will go out. So if you're approved before January 1st, you should expect a payment by the 8th. And if you're taking intermittent leave, that might look a little different depending on your schedule.
And do those payments cover from day one of leave?
Yeah, so unlike some short-term disability programs or otherwise, this program does count from day one of leave. Yep, so you'll be paid from the first day of absence.
Great, thank you so much. All right, a live question from the audience today here. My employer is using an outside company for paid leave. So this would be a private plan through their employer or equivalent plan through their employer. This person's asking, do I still apply through the state website, or do I apply to that private company through my employer?
You do not, if you are covered by an equivalent plan, you do not apply through our website. Okay, so if you're covered by a private plan or an equivalent plan, you're going to apply through that carrier. So that could either be an insurance carrier, and you'd apply through their website, and your employer should be sharing that information. Or if they're self-insured, it might be a process directly with their employer. So ask your employer to make sure you get that information. They may also be accepting applications now, or they might not accept applications until January 1st. But you should not apply to the state. If you do, you'll be denied.
Okay, great. All right, so next audience question here. If I want to start taking bonding leave intermittently in January, do I have to wait until January 1st to apply?
Yes, if you want to take intermittent leave, you can't apply today. You have to wait until January 1st.
Got it. So it's just the people that are wanting to take that continuous leave or all in one block that can apply now. Okay. Next question here. We have time for 1 or 2 more. If an employee is fired on December 31st, can they still apply for bonding time?
So just as a reminder, our program is an insurance program that it's about coverage across employment. So you might receive wages from multiple jobs, and they could be part of your coverage. So yes, you can apply for leave from the program even if you are no longer employed starting after being fired on December 31st, you would still be covered.
Okay, great. This next question is about PTO. Do we have to notify the state in our application if we're going to use our PTO time to top off? Or do we only have to notify the state if we're replacing the entire amount of paid leave with PTO?
Yep, I'm really glad someone asked this. You only will need to tell us if you're replacing the total amount. So only if you're taking a full day off. If you're using PTO, sick, or vacation as a supplemental payment, you don't need to let us know, but your employer will let us know that.
Okay, great. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Okay, if our employer changes, so if we have a different employer before our leave starts, or we become unemployed, are we still eligible for the paid leave based on our 2025 income? And if so, do we need to submit a new application? So I think this person is saying maybe they'll apply in advance of January 1st, but their employer, they might either have a new employer by then or may be unemployed by then. So do they need to submit a new application in that case?
So the application will ask about all of your the employers you've had that you have currently or in the past 6 months. So you don't need to submit a new application. You'll tell us your current or past employers, and you'll tell us who you're taking leave from. So that is not, you'll be able to apply, and you should be eligible if you had eligible wages, again, more than $3,900 in the previous year from all those different jobs.
Okay, great. And I want to make sure to get to this last question before I start wrapping up here. It's about postpartum depression. Can I take bonding leave and leave for my postpartum depression in one application? I'm currently 4 months postpartum.
Thanks for that question. That's an important topic. So leave that would be if someone needs time away from work because they are unable to work due to postpartum depression, that would be a medical leave. So if someone needs that leave, again, it needs to be certified by a medical provider, and it needs to meet the criteria of a serious medical condition, which it definitely could in certain scenarios, but that's a medical application. So you would apply for that in January as medical leave, and then bonding leave would be a separate application.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that last question there. I'm going to start wrapping up because it's almost 1 o'clock. And I want to be respectful of folks' time. So we're going to wrap up by asking for your feedback on today's webinar. You see a QR code on your screen right now. It's a really short survey. Please scan that, fill out the survey. Takes 1 to 2 minutes, and it will help us understand what worked well and how we can improve. We'll also be putting that link in the chat as well. And as a final reminder, the slides from today's webinar will be on our website soon. Again, that's paidleave.mn.gov. And if you have any questions today that didn't get answered, I know there's a lot of questions, please reach out to our contact center. They are standing by and ready to help you. Their phone number and their email is in the chat, so make sure you jot that down. And it's also on our website, of course. All right, thank you, everyone. And congrats to all those new and expecting parents out there. We're so excited for you and are excited to see your applications coming through. So thanks, everyone, so much for joining us today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.